Welcome back to another exciting episode of Speak Easy. On this episode, we're talking with Peter. Peter is a part of the LGBTI community, as well as being an accredited social worker. Peter works within the private practice environment and within the community health sector.
Welcome to Speak Easy, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I guess first we'd like to talk about your inspiration. Can you tell us what motivated you to step into the social work field and mental health?
I think mental health was probably an accident, and I grew up in a very small rural community. There was only 1,000 in the community when I left, but there was a lot of poverty there, and I was very conscious of, I have to say, women in particular, being forced to live inside a private sphere, and I felt that that was unjust. So men were very present, and women had to cop whatever was dished up. So there was a lot of violence there, and a lot of teen pregnancy there, very young teen pregnancy there. And I was very aware of being a gay baby, so I knew that for me to have a place, I had to be silent as well. So I guess I woke up as an activist in some way, in a quiet way, and knew that there was great risk. So I think the unjustness of life, and I didn't feel a victim to that, but I was very conscious of work in a field where you help to be an advocate for people or to empower people to be a self-advocate. I think that was what encouraged me to go into the field. And then mental health, I don't think I was aware of mental health as a concept even as a young person, so it was around more about equality and fairness that encouraged me to go into that space.
I assume growing up in that environment it would have been hard to be able to be yourself.
Yep, I was very conscious of not being able to be myself. I do remember actually, I outed myself when I was about 6, maybe even younger, and I had this friend called Rodney Kenny, if you're out there Rodney, all these years later, and I was just supremely attracted to his dad, and I was just little, and I remember saying to my mum, I'm going to marry a man like Rodney Kenny's dad, and how quickly that shut down, the panic that came, and how quickly that got shut down by, you mean Mrs. Kenny. And I think that was the first time I realised that I wasn't going to be able to marry a man. Before that, it had never occurred to me that that wasn't going to be possible.
Yeah, it's these little innocent cues that, you know, when as young people and before we've been conditioned to have this understanding of what's appropriate and right in society, we just blurt out what we're feeling, and which is a beautiful thing, but that the way that gets shut down is not very nice.
Yeah. And there's a lot of panic around that. But it makes you very aware of how much is just a construct, whether that's gender, anything, that everything is just a construct, you know, but naturally that came out. So yes, I learned very quickly to shut your mouth, and so I just held my breath until I could get out.
Yeah, and it also links to a lot of like guilt and shame too, when people say those things. Yeah.
And I think when you're a little person, you don't even know what that is. There's not even a word for that. So it's heaviness and sadness and questioning.
And loneliness.
And loneliness.
Yeah, so there's a quote on your site that says, at the core of our identity is our relationship with our gender, sexuality, and sexual orientation. An identity that deviates from the cultural norm can be challenging as we live in a homophobic and transphobic society. Now, there's a lot of people who talk about how far we've come and how amazing we're doing as a society. But can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like when you first were working in the field compared to what it is now, and what your thoughts are on where we're going with this?
I think I just have to say that I do think things have changed, but I don't think they've changed for the reason that we think they've changed. When I first started working, I was very young, and I just accidentally got this job. I'd trained as a nurse, and I accidentally, because I wanted to meet men, and I thought the cliche was, so I thought it was probably going to be a high probability that I'll meet Rodney Kenny's dad, right? If I am a nurse, a boy nurse. And that didn't happen, but I was very bad at that work, but I got a job in King's Cross working when HIV first became a thing. And the Grim Reaper was on the TV, and this job came up working with what was known as the AIDS bus, which doesn't sound nice now, but at the time that's what it was called, run by the Albion Street Centre in Sydney, and I was just taking blood, and then we would house male sex workers, and pretty much the work was just, what are you going to do if you're positive? What decisions are you going to make? What are you going to do if you're negative? What decisions are you going to make? That was as basic as it got. But condoms and clean syringes and those sorts of things. And but hospitals were rejecting people. Sick people were going to hospital and they were not being admitted. So that was really tough. And from then I work on St Peter's Lane, which was known as Trannies Lane, where sex workers were working. It was a really dangerous place to be for them, not for me, but sometimes for me. But and so and we were very visible on the television. There was a lot of hatred. There was a lot of gay bashing. There was a lot of murder. A lot of things were going on that was all fear-based stuff, and so survival meant something really quite different. Survival just meant, how can I be out in the world, to how can I actually not catch this thing that nobody wants to talk about and not die of this. Interestingly, here we are in COVID times having similar conversations, but because it's affecting heteronormative worlds, we have a vaccine really quickly and suddenly everybody's taking public health really seriously. But at that time, because it was affecting marginalised communities, which is the LGBTIQ plus community, nobody really wanted to know. They just didn't want their kids to catch it, but everybody else, so there was a lot of turning of the back. And I think, as we've come through that, and with organisations like ACT UP and the introduction of AZT and all of those things, which were good and bad, it connected the community in a really serious way. It was almost, for me, a second stone wall, I think, where people just bonded and looked after each other and stuck up for each other. And I think what's come out of that now is that I see things changing. I get very angry, as I mentioned off screen, so I won't rub anyone's face in anything, which is what I get accused of often. But I think the prettiness of gay, which means you either have to be funny or you have to be glamorous or you have to be outrageous, that's acceptable because it's a nice pill for everyone to swallow. It's entertainment.
It's not threatening.
It's non-threatening. Questioning is viewed as aggression, and I think that's probably where I think we're brave enough to question now. The fact that this is happening, is evidence of progress. I think the real change is that we've come out to each other and that we're looking after each other in proper ways, like, grown-up ways, that we're looking after our children because, if you're a gay boy, you're a gay baby. Sorry to tell you that, mama, but, that's the truth of it. And I think we're recognising that really early and we're looking out for each other. I fear that that hetero models, and by that I mean funding organisations probably, which are old, are still handing money to organisations that have a straight lens over them. And so there's still a little bit of the, aren't we grateful that we've got, $20,000 for a program that does nothing, that doesn't even pay one full-time staff member. I think, but I think that we're joining hands enough that things can change somewhere.
And one of those things that I've noticed is, as you mentioned it, helping each other in that sense of community, and how community is coming together to support each other, to encourage each other, and to celebrate with each other as well. And having that freedom to celebrate with each other, I mean, that's something that's pretty powerful now.
Yeah.
We're a little bit safer to be able to do that.
Yeah. Because when I was a young person, I think the internalised homophobia was really strong. We were afraid to come out to each other sometimes.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's as real now. But I still think gay people don't need to be grateful for the fact that there's a school program. They don't need to be grateful for the fact that, something's existing in an organisation, that diversity training in an organisation exists. We don't need to be grateful for that. We need to be really angry that hasn't happened 15, 20 years ago when we really needed it to happen, or we wouldn't be sitting here being grateful for it now. Yeah.
It's like saying you should be grateful that you're allowed to be who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I think that the transphobia and homophobia is still alive and well, and we're all alert to it.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
So can you tell us what benefits and challenges there are of being part of the LGBTI community as well as working within it?
For me, I don't find working within my own community a challenge at all.
Yeah. So what are the benefits?
I think not working in my community is far more challenging for me than working in my community. The benefit is that you get to talk to people in a real way, that you get to work with people so that they don't have to waste so much of their therapeutic time explaining who they are, and you can actually talk about what's happening for them rather than them feeling like they have to apologise or spend 4 sessions slowly leaking or coming out to me.
Yeah.
You know, what a waste of time. You know, they just have to be who they are. I think that's the benefit of it, is that it allows people a space to completely connect with a clinician or whoever in a real way, straight away, without having to apologise for themselves.
There's a lot of unique experiences and fears and anxieties that are associated with just being LGBTI, which is really hard when you have to spend half your time educating your clinician on all of those very specific things, rather than just dealing with why you've gone there.
Yeah, like worrying about being misgendered.
Yeah.
What a weight to carry on your way, you know, worrying about all of that sort of stuff. And often the risk of that means that people don't come for session number 2. You know, that only has to happen once. You know, people just sort of think, I'm not sure that that's a safe space. So I think the benefit is to create a safe space so that people can actually bring their stuff to you rather than to apologise for their identity to you. Yeah, it's a privilege, which is a weird thing to say, because when you're part of that community, I mean, I don't know that straight people think that.
Yeah.
Gee, it's a privilege to work in a straight environment as a straight person.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone's saying that so much. Do you know? Yeah.
And so, are there any common themes that come across when working with members of the LGBTI community?
Probably not spoken so much, but I think there's often a fear of, I'm not sure what my future will be. I feel that a lot from people, that I'm not sure that I can have the things that everybody else has. There's a little bit of that. I think anxiety is true, and, you know, stress and depression is true. I don't know that there's a human who doesn't have those things anyway. I think the way we manage those things might be different. For a lot of people, there's an underlying fear of, I'm not sure that I'll be able to locate myself inside the world. Do you know? Which is not surprising, given how we're brought up. People are brought up to fit the sex that's assigned at birth. You know, and I think you find out really young that that's a weird thing for you, and how am I going to manage that? So you don't know how you fit in that tiny little family unit. That's where it all sort of begins, and then your school unit, and then, you know, as that grows out.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's like one of the most common things will be, how do we find somebody that we can connect to, that we can feel safe with, that we don't have to explain ourselves to?
Yeah, I know when I go to a GP, that's the first thing I look for. Do you know, am I able to just talk about my cough rather than somebody say, you know, what are you doing sexually? Yeah. And is that a good idea?
It's like at the
I'm here for the cough.
Yeah.
You know, did I have to fill that form out? Like, there's a lot of form filling out that talks about that sort of stuff. Yeah. You know, that becomes irrelevant to the consultation. So you're probably right. Yeah. There probably is a theme of that.
I think, like, being a trans person, there's something I recognise is that every interaction throughout the day is, how am I going to be received as a trans person in this interaction, no matter what the interaction is. And that's like a constant source of anxiety that I think the community experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about the common relief? Is there a common theme in just the relief that people get from being able to speak openly?
I hope so. It's a weird space when you're a clinician, because you're not supposed to talk about yourself. So your natural inclination would be to out yourself straight away, probably in the flyer. You can see people visibly relax when they've had enough clues to be themselves, I think. Yeah. And they use humour in a different way, and they can talk about personal things in a way that they know that you're not judging their interpretation of the world. Yeah.
I know that when I came out and when I found somebody to talk to, and that I could be open about my identity, I felt a huge weight lift from my every part of my being. Have you seen that? Have you experienced that in your work?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what would you say to somebody who hasn't been down that path, to come and talk to somebody professionally? How would you invite somebody into that space to just be able to offer them that same opportunity to just release that burden?
It's a hard thing to do when you're feeling vulnerable, but I would encourage people to ask, what's your experience of? Always interview the clinician. Always, to find out. And that doesn't have to be aggressive, or it's not about intimidating anybody. That's just about saying, I need to know these things, and ask the question.
I think we go into those spaces often thinking or feeling the power imbalance.
Yeah.
So putting that back on yourself and asking the clinician questions can create more of a base.
And it's a good practice for a clinician to say, before you start, ask me 3 things.
Yeah.
I really like that. That's
Just
never
ask me
happened
3
for
things.
me.
Don't even say how you're going. Like, you can, of course, be polite. But you can say, ask me 3 things. That's not about why you're here today.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, I love
Because
that.
they'll answer. People will answer, because you're right, power is a strange thing, and I don't think the clinicians are always aware that they have the power, but they're not the one feeling vulnerable. You should be aware that you have the power.
Yeah.
But often they're not thinking that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about our community. Can you tell us what are some ways that we can help support ourselves and each other?
I think sharing's a big thing. A big pressure, I think, for people in this community is their physical appearance. I think there's a lot of judgment around what we look like and how we present to the world. And I think supporting each other and actually getting to know each other as the people that we are, rather than the image we present or what we represent, is probably the best thing that we can do. Being in this community means that you're full of people who have fought really hard to stand up, really hard, from being really little people. Being conscious of that as a little person means that you're conscious that you don't fit in the world. So it's been a big struggle. Some people go internal, some people go external and take huge risks. But I think it's not expecting that behaviour from someone, and actually get to know the person and the road that they've been on is the best thing that we can do. And we know how to have fun. We don't take ourselves seriously. We can't. We've been mocked for too long.
Now, as a trans woman, I'm judged all the time. And so I kind of just let that judgment go now. And it's like, well, you know what? I'm free to be myself, because it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to be judged. So I might as well make the most of it.
Yeah.
And be free.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also it means that you're surrounded with people who really don't judge you, because it means, because you've been able to do that for yourself, the people that you choose to have around you aren't doing that. So you really get to feel what that, because you've got the opposites going. You're around people who are doing it, but you're also around people who aren't. Whereas I think people who aren't in that situation, it's just everything's a blur, everything's beige, because everyone just treats me the same all the time and everywhere I go.
And I feel like that's built the relationships. So the relationships I enjoy now are so much stronger, so much more connected, and so much deeper because of that letting go. And people see that, and then that gives people the freedom in my circle to just be them too. So yeah, I'm being me, they're being them, we're all just being.
We're just being. Yeah.
It's lovely.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
As a trans woman and as a trans man, do you feel the pressure to role model yourselves somewhere in ways that maybe you don't feel ready to do?
I feel a heavy weight all the time to take on more masculine traits, or more traits that are seen as masculine that I would naturally do, or to present myself in a way that would feel uncomfortable. This constant feeling of people saying, well, a man wouldn't say that, a man wouldn't do this, that's not manly enough. And it's like, what kind
It's
of...
alright, because I get that too. Don't worry too much.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Do you, Zara?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there is a lot of weight on the way I behave in public. People identify me as a visible trans woman, and so if I behave in a particular way, people who are observing are saying, I saw this trans woman and she behaved this way, and so that then, because they have such small experience of trans women, that one experience shapes all their experiences of trans women. So I do feel that there is a little bit of pressure to make sure that I'm role modeling behaviors that will build connection and acceptance and awareness.
The more visible you are, the heavier that kind of feels like.
Yeah.
I was going to say burden, but it's not a burden. Like, just the more weight it has to how you feel like you should present yourself, because you are representing the community. The more media you hear about is all the negativity around the community, around the trans community.
Yeah, I do feel like sometimes it is a burden because sometimes I'm exhausted and keeping up that presence, I guess, can be exhausting. And sometimes I don't even go to the shops because I just don't have the energy to do that. And I know that every time I'm out in public, I'm being seen, I'm being acknowledged as that trans woman.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Sometimes you just want to go to the supermarket without someone asking you what's in your pants. It happens.
Oh, golly.
It happens.
Yes.
For clinicians working in the field who have LGBTI clients, but maybe they're not LGBTI themselves, what kind of advice maybe would you give them working in our community?
I think there's a great opportunity for people in the hetero community to work with our community. I do. I think that's really possible. In the same way that I can work with somebody who's experienced family violence. And the way we do that is through secondary consult. So it's really important to know who your networks are. I think as a clinician, like, it's a really important thing to have a portfolio of networks and to seek secondary consult from people. A great thing for people to do is to out themselves, because we have to do that every day and we have to do that to you. So it'd be a really valuable thing to even the thing up to admit the fact that I don't identify with your community. There's going to be things that you raise that I might not know the answer to or be comfortable with, and we can work together and develop a network of people that you can call with the client in the room if you have to, and just really feel, because it's all about inclusiveness. That's what we're asking for. Everybody, every human is in the world. And so I think by doing that, admitting the fact that you don't have all the answers means that you're exposed as being vulnerable, the same as your client. You have to come out, the same as your client. And you have to seek information elsewhere, which is what your client's doing to you. And I think that that's something that you can actually do and engage even stronger, I think. And maybe you'll learn something from them.
Yeah, and what an amazing experience.
What a gift for free.
For them to experience what that's like,
Yeah.
to come out, to experience what we experience every day. Having to have that conversation is so valuable for them to,
really
to
valuable.
understand.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think that'll help you bond, especially for young people.
Yeah.
But also for old people. There's so many people who have lived in heteronormative relationships and then their partners died and they come out. That's a really tough gig to, be 75 and then suddenly have to out yourself to somebody who may be 35 sitting in a room.
We just wanted to thank Peter so much for being on Speakeasy this week. We have a little gift to give for you for coming aboard.
Look, it's a logo.
Thank you so much.
Great.
It's also chocolate.
Fantastic.
And it's vegan.
Great.
Well, thank you for watching Speakeasy. Tune in next week for more community content, interviews, and our fabulous faces.
Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for extended episodes and like our Facebook page to show your love for Speakeasy and the LGBTI community.